So, welcome. I'm Nancy Muir. I'm a Miles for Hips board member, and I have the absolute privilege of being here tonight with Eve Harrison, who is one of our junior board members in 2024 and has contributed a lot to Miles for Hips, and also with her mom, Caroline, and wanted to have them share a little bit about their hip dysplasia experience. So, we'll start off. I would just love to have you both share a little bit about your hip dysplasia journey as a family.
Sure. I'll start if that's okay. Yeah. So we didn't know anything about hip dysplasia in the spring of 2020. And then Eve started having some really awful pain when she was riding her bike in one hip and then occasionally in the other hip. And it got bad very, very quickly. She was on crutches within 3 to 4 weeks. And I was very, very worried. And we took her to our family doctor who ordered x-rays, which were normal. And my mind went to terrible places, of course. And then I started going back to what I know from school. I'm a physio as well, Nancy.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
but we didn't learn anything about hip dysplasia in physio school. We really didn't. I remember I had vague recollections that there's something with teenage girls and their hips, but I
Mhm.
didn't remember what it was. And so these x-rays came back normal. And then I got pictures of the x-rays and I stared at them and stared at them. And I thought, gee, those sockets look really, really shallow. That just doesn't look right. Could that be what's causing her pain? And we were back to the family doctor. We went to a sports medicine doctor, MRIs, but this was all over the course of like 4 to 5 months.
And the orthopedic surgeon here.
Yeah, we went to the orthopedic surgeon here in North Bay and he did an MRI with contrast. He ordered that. And we kept getting all these normal results. Everything's fine. She's normal, but she was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And I remember her asking him, like, what if this MRI with contrast comes back normal? Like, then what?
And he said, you're just gonna have to live with it.
Yeah, I just have to live with it then.
Because so many of the surgeons we saw just didn't believe there was anything wrong, and a few of them suggested that the pain was in my head and that I was making it up and what was going on, and there's nothing wrong with you, and it was really frustrating.
And you started to think that maybe it was in your head,
right? If these really smart surgeons are telling me there's nothing wrong, why wouldn't I believe them? So it was really a hard mental battle at that point too.
Yeah, it was. And then I became more and more convinced. I had my ruler and my protractor and I'm measuring angles on these x-rays. And
you got some textbooks and we're reading all about it.
Yeah, doing all kinds of research. And then we managed to get a referral to a specialist in Ottawa. And he gave us the diagnosis of hip dysplasia. And it was pretty unheard of, even amongst like myself and my colleagues, where you hear about hip dysplasia in babies and toddlers.
Yeah.
We hadn't heard about it in teenagers. And so I guess it all began in June of that year. And then in December, she had her first PAO, but she was on crutches for all that time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I had the first PAO in December, right before Christmas, and then took a month off school, and then had my second PAO in May, at the end of May. And then that summer was my recovery period, and then went into grade 12.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of that happened in her grade 11 year, I guess, mostly.
10, 11,
10,
yeah.
11.
And then I went back to school off crutches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In September of 2021, you were finally off crutches.
Yeah. So I spent that year kind of recovering from it, physically, emotionally, and then the next year was my first year of university, and that's when I actually started my PAO resource center in my second year of university.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But that first year, you got really quite active again.
Yeah, I was back to like more than my previous athletic ability, and it was great.
Yeah.
Well, and I tend to, sometimes things come up, and I know we talked about some questions ahead of time, but sometimes I kind of veer off. I mean, what a journey. And I think you guys both speak to the fact of, I mean, you really had to advocate and push. And like you said, you do get to the point. It's a challenge when you have, like you said, Eve, very, very bright people working, looking at your situation and saying, you're fine.
Yeah.
And I mean, Caroline, you sounds like you were kind of going, no, no,
Yeah.
there's still something, and you're a very intelligent woman and have quite the educational training to be able to look at
Yeah.
this. And what would you, or I mean, how did that feel as a parent to be watching your child and not
Well,
uh,
it's terrifying, right? You're worried that they're
yeah.
going to be in pain forever. And um, I really feel for people that get these answers that, oh, the x-rays are fine. And then,
Mhm.
go away and endure another year of pain, or like I was lucky to have the knowledge to pursue it further and faster.
Hmm.
But I think people live for a very long time in pain from hip dysplasia before getting answers.
Yeah, it just makes me think about all the teenagers and people like me that are out there right now,
Yeah.
and they're convinced that there's nothing wrong with them because of these surgeons that are telling them that, but they're living in so much pain because they don't have someone like my mom
Yeah.
to figure it out. And like
Mm.
it was so scary, like to see, like I was on like the scaredest I've been was when I saw you really scared about it. Like
Yeah.
it didn't, I wasn't scared until I saw her being scared and sad for my pain because it made me
Hmm.
know how real it was. And
One moment that really stood out to me was after we'd had the diagnosis and our family doctor said, this has been really interesting for me because this hip dysplasia thing with Eve is like a once in a career diagnosis for me. And I
Mhm.
just thought, no way, no
it's
way.
not.
It means you've missed it
Yeah,
other
you've missed it so many
times.
times if you're saying that's once in a
Yeah.
Ugh.
career.
So that's when I think we realized we had to become more advocates.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
just
and unfortunately that's, oh, sorry.
just to get the word out about hip dysplasia that it's a
Yeah.
thing and that there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately that's not an uncommon experience, right? That people go, I mean, the statistics are something like a patient sees an average of, I think it's like 5 providers over the course of 3 years to get an accurate diagnosis. And like Caroline, I mean, you and I didn't know you were a physio too, and we've seen it probably and not known we've seen it. Right.
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
and even when you reflect back, and I work in pediatrics, so, but I know even I've had misdiagnoses even in babies and toddlers and gone, "Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I can't believe that's what it was and we missed it." Um,
Mhm.
and in the
Even
teenagers and adults.
I wish I'd looked up the statistic before this chat,
Yeah.
but there's some large number of total hips that are done in
Mhm.
patients under the age of 60. Like 70% of total hips done in
Yeah.
patients under the age of 60 are because of hip dysplasia. Like
Yes,
that's
it's
a lot. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
yeah. And Eve, I think, you and I have gotten to know each other through Miles for Hips, and our Miles for Hips board really comprises, most of us are adults who have gotten to the journey
Yeah.
as adults, but we, started this junior board member position because we really felt it was important to have representatives on the team who could truly interact and know what it's like to be younger with this diagnosis, because we certainly know that the teenage population is also quite
Yeah.
large, that
Yeah.
this diagnosis. And you certainly went through this through some very pivotal years. I've often reflected and said, what would have been like if I was diagnosed with this? You were what, maybe 16, 7, 6,
Yeah,
Yeah.
16,
16?
right? Yeah, it was really hard. Like I missed so much. Like it was also during COVID, so I
Mhm.
missed because like we had to be isolating, and then I also missed because I couldn't walk and I'm a very active person. I bike, I snowboard, I ski. Like we're a very active family, and I couldn't do anything that I was used to doing. I couldn't be with my friends. I lost out on a lot of experiences that I would like to
Mhm.
have had in high school. I couldn't play any sports, be like running around. I don't know. It was,
There are a couple moments that stood out to me. One was when we had to arrange for the special adaptive transportation
oh
to get to
yeah.
school, and
Oh,
that was pretty hard on you to
Yeah.
arrive at school on your crutches.
Yeah. I had to like we lived too close to the school to qualify for a bus, but too far for me to walk on crutches, obviously, in the icy winter. But so my mom arranged for me to be in this special van that would drive people with disabilities to school, and oh, I was so embarrassed to be in this van.
You shouldn't have been,
And
but
I know I
you
shouldn't have
know,
been. I was a ki- I
that was
was
tough at 16.
Yeah, it was hard. And so that was
And then another moment that was tough, she was actually, it was after your second PAO and you were recovering all that summer, and her whole friend group was going off to work as park rangers in Algonquin Park.
oh,
And and they were all heading off and excitedly coming over to say goodbye, and you
And
were in bed recovering from
yeah,
surgery, and
and
that was pretty tough moment, eh?
yeah, and they would come back and tell me all about their fun times, and it was really sad for me. But luckily, the next year I went with them, and I'll be doing my fourth year as a park ranger this summer, so
Hmm.
that's nice.
I'm so glad you've been able to get back to all of that, and
Yeah.
but it is hard, and people mean really well, and partly you want the distraction, right, as a patient to get to enjoy your friends and having them come over and being able to share, but there's a lot you've had to
There's
sacrifice
tough
a
moments.
lot and miss out
Yeah.
on. Yeah. Well, and I think you might have then just answered when we talked about what challenges you encountered. I mean, is there anything else that you feel? I know you talked about getting the diagnosis and then the challenges both mentally and physically related to
I
that.
Yeah,
Is
think,
there?
yeah,
I think we
really
hit
getting
all
the
the
diagnosis was the hardest part.
yeah, so
Yeah.
many I don't know if we've counted up how many people I saw for it, but it was maybe five providers
Yeah,
Mm.
probably about that.
before finally getting a diagnosis, and that was with a lot of work from my mom. If we hadn't had her, like I would have seen way more providers before getting a diagnosis. Like
Yeah.
she knew what I had. She knew I had hip dysplasia, and she needed to find someone who would tell me that I
Yeah.
had it and give me a solution. And if she didn't know that, we wouldn't be where we are. So
We're in a pretty small community in Northern Ontario with like a lot of generalists, right? We do have
Yeah.
orthopedic surgeons, but they just do the
they
basics. They're
do
not
hip
specialists.
replacements and knee
Yeah.
replacements, and
So yeah, we definitely had to go out of town to get a diagnosis, but
yeah.
yeah.
What and with all of those interactions, can you talk about, one of the things we really aim to do with Miles for Hips is to try to help bridge the gap and build positive relationships between patients and their healthcare teams. Can you share any experiences, either that were particularly positive, things that your healthcare team did, your surgeon, other people that really have supported you or helped you along the process, or maybe examples of something where it was not a positive experience and how that impacted your journey?
Natalie?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
What Eve was seeing an outpatient physio in our community, and we were sort of coming towards the diagnosis of hip dysplasia. And this woman had a friend in Ottawa who is a specialist in hip care,
And she's a physio.
and she's a physio, yeah. And she was a tremendous resource for us. We never met her in person, but she consulted with like pre-diagnosis and throughout the rehab process. She
Hmm.
spoke with your physio locally to give advice. And it was just, she never got paid for that work, but she was just a
Oh,
tremendous
wow.
resource and a tremendous advocate for hip dysplasia and
Yeah.
recovery. And so that was very, very
Yeah,
nice.
she helped my physio with all of my rehab and like prehab before getting
Yeah.
ready for the surgery. And I actually did an interview with her for Miles for Hips, who's the physio I talked with. So if anyone is looking to hear more about that, you can find that interview on the YouTube. But
Yeah.
she was really wonderful.
So just another member of the hip dysplasia community who went the extra mile
Hmm.
for us, which was great.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Eve, yeah, I was just about to say she's the one that you interviewed during our team
Yeah.
week. So yes, those videos were available. We did them in March, and like Eve said, they are available, and we could probably link it even to
Oh
this
yeah.
Yeah,
to
link
this
it
interview,
in
just
the.
so that they're kind of connected. Because yeah, that was a wonderful interview that you did with her. And I think it speaks, Caroline, you can probably speak to this too, but with hip dysplasia, there are big centers around the world,
Yeah.
Canada, United States, elsewhere in the world. But it is something I think, you brought up before, that hip dysplasia, the awareness is coming,
Hmm.
compared to even when you and I were back in school.
Yeah.
But it's still a unusual enough surgery that, and still done with such specialized centers, that there are a lot of physios who have never treated somebody after a
Oh,
PAO,
yeah.
who haven't been aware that they've treated somebody with hip dysplasia and don't have that expertise. The hip is a very complex joint.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's an amazing connection that you have, that the specialized physios can really help disseminate that knowledge and support others in the community. And I mean, it
Mhm.
sounds like she played an amazing role in that for you, and being able to allow you to get local care, but also very high quality local
Yeah.
care, and have that element of specialization with it too. So that's wonderful.
Mhm.
What, if you had to reflect on it, what would you say have been positives that have come out of this journey for you?
I think the most positive experience for me is that I've been able to use everything I've learned to help others. So I created the PAO Resource Center, which is an Instagram account where we share a bunch of stories, positive and negative stories about people who have hip dysplasia and have undergone PAOs and how they've gotten through their recoveries and different tools and um, recovery tips to help individuals. I've also been able to help one of my friends get a diagnosis who I met in university, and we realized that she had a very similar type of pain and symptoms to me before my PAOs, and we helped her get a diagnosis with my surgeon, and now she's
Oh,
about
wow.
to do her second PAO.
Yeah.
So that was really great.
Yeah. And probably similar for me too. Like I'm I don't work in outpatient orthopedics, but sometimes some of our outpatient therapists will come to me and say, "Oh, I've got this teenage girl with
Yeah.
back pain or knee pain or hip pain, and do you think you could look at her x-rays, or could you have a look at her? Do you think it could be hip dysplasia?" And we've identified a few. And so
Wow.
nice to be able to just to talk about it and get the word out a little bit.
She's like the hip dysplasia specialist for our
I
hospital in
guess
my
so.
mind.
What I'd really like to do, like as a next step, I don't know if it'll happen, but is to get the word out to family doctors, like to our generalists,
Mm.
right? Who
Yes.
pick this up and make the right referrals faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. You both, I mean, you both have really taken the reins with this and helped to raise the awareness and to
Oh,
support others. And I think that is, I know for me personally, that's also something very positive that's come out of it is just, I think it's very empowering. And it almost is like sense making or, giving meaning to your journey to be able to give back to others.
yeah.
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 It
You know,
feels
it
good.
may, yeah.
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 After having a hard few years, it's nice to be able
Mhm.
to
Hmm.
exactly make some sense out of it.
Yeah. And Eve will definitely make sure to link your Instagram
Oh,
account too,
yeah.
because it's truly wonderful. And Eve
Thank you.
does such a nice job with that and is really serving so many through it. What
Mm.
kind of on that note, is there anything what are you hoping will change or improve related to hip dysplasia in the future? I know
Well,
you've been
just I guess really what we've said already, just that more
Mhm.
people know about it. Think of it,
Yeah.
when your client comes in with hip pain. Um,
What
yeah,
that isn't even a possibility. Like,
yeah, keep it on the radar.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
radiologists might look at an X-ray, and when they say nil acute, doesn't, means there's no fracture, but structurally, what
Yeah.
could be going on? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you both alluded to, I mean, how it impacted both of you, that delayed diagnosis.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it
And
wasn't
it's
as delayed as many people, right?
Yeah,
Many people
we
waited.
were really
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Makes me think about people who had to wait a lot longer than we did, and how hard it was for us, and it must be so much harder for other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on a final note, what advice would you have for individuals with hip dysplasia or their caregivers? I'd love to hear from both of you on this.
Hmm. I think that the main thing is that you really need a good support system in both getting a diagnosis and in the recovery from a PAO or a surgery like that. Like, my mom was my main caregiver, and it was so important that I had her. She was there for me through all the hardest times and took care of me. She knew exactly what to do, and it was wonderful. Also, having an online community is really was really great. I wasn't as involved when I was going through it, but um like having people to relate to, you might not necessarily have that in your own community, but having that through social media could be really
Yeah, that's a really good point because I mean, you've really done that on Instagram, but my generation, we went to, did get a lot of support on Facebook when we
Mhm.
were getting your diagnosis and going through the surgery and that sort of thing. And there's strangers out there going through similar things, and it can be really helpful.
And that's something just to, we, Caroline, the I think people, when we're patients, think a lot about the support that patients need, but
Hmm.
caregivers need support
Yeah.
as well. What resources did you come across, or how did you get support? Because that's a big role to do and to care
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
somebody, right?
Well,
I mean,
there's a lot of kindness and understanding in my workplace when I took
yeah,
time to help you out. And through our church too, people were very supportive. It's just and you know, not like the gifts and all that, but just sort of the listening ear and the
Yeah.
people that reached out to say I'm thinking of you and that sort of thing was very helpful.
I think I'm so lucky I had you because you know how to do transfers. You knew how to transfer me from the chair to the bed and from the
Yeah.
walker to the bed. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me like regarding how does my mom help me stand up? I don't know how to do this. Nobody
Yeah.
taught me how to get from my bed and out of my bed from my walker. Like all these things, people like
Yeah.
it's I think like having your caregiver learn how to help you with these things before the surgery is pretty vital. Like even my friend Cassie, like her mom didn't know how to help her transit, like
Yeah. Stand up from the
stand up
chair.
from the chair
Yeah.
or move from the bed to stand
Hmm.
to standing. Like it's hard for people who don't have a background.
Yeah.
And actually prompts me to ask you, Caroline, has your practice as a physio changed at all because of this or
Yeah.
any of your participation
I think
care?
I'm a little more kind, you know, like when the husband will say to me, like, "Oh, how do I get my wife into the car?" And I think, "Oh, it's easy." And now I'll go downstairs and help him into the car.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting because that's something I've always said as a healthcare professional too. I said I think I've really learned more
Yeah,
about healthcare being on this side of
for
things than
sure.
I ever did as a physio. And I thought I knew what I was doing, and then all of a sudden you end up on the patient side and the family side, and you go, "Wow, it's
Yeah.
quite different on this
I
side."
know. And when, you know, when I give someone their exercises, I say, go home, do them 3 times a day. And now I know that like it's really hard to do
Yeah,
that whole set of exercises 3 times a day, in addition to like naps and meds and meals and
And
all
just
that.
being awake.
And just being awake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a little more understanding now.
It's very
Mhm.
eye-opening, I think,
Yeah.
and a learning experience, right, for good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
You're
well,
right.
this is wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign
I
off?
think that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well, this
appreciate the opportunity to reflect on it again because it's been
Yeah.
a couple years and
Yeah.
it's just nice to think back and to maybe help other people. Through.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful, and I think people really enjoy our patient experience interviews. They're just very real, and it's just nice to hear people's stories and to hear their experiences and to hear, for people to know they're not alone. Like you said, there's so much to hearing that, and I think this has been especially nice to hear you're not alone on the patient side. You're also not alone in your experiences on the caregiving side or the parent side, family side.
Yeah.
Yeah.